Okay, welcome back. Our next video here is going to be laying out all of the lines for our legs, to which we'll then later cut on the bandsaw. So what you're going to need is your two 9x9 squares, and we will not need these right away, and we'll just start with one for now. Okay, now what you're going to need for this, I really recommend one of these carpenter squares. It can be done with a combination square, even just a ruler, but as far as just being able to quickly pull dimensions, these are really nice. So if you can get your hands on one of these, that would be great. Okay, so then you're gonna start with your 9x9 square. You're gonna want to make sure the grain is vertical. Really important for strength. You know, it's easy to make this mistake because a 9x9, it'd be easy to make the grain horizontal. But again, first things first, make sure the grain's straight. It does say it right here on the sheet that the grain needs to be vertical for strength. So please remember to do that. Okay, so you've got your legs handout here. Remember to have that in Notability, from Schoology to Notability. That way, if the Wi-Fi ever craps out, if Schoology ever goes down, pushing it to Notability means you'll have it on your iPad as long as you have your iPad with a charge. So let's start laying out these lines. If you look at the drawing, you'll kind of see what the finished product is supposed to be. Everything in the gray represents the 9x9 square you start with, but stuff that's eventually going to be scrap. So anyway, let's get started. We can start with the top section here, and we can start with this corner. Now you'll see there's a lot of dimensions over on this side, but not a lot of dimensions over here. Okay, when you see that in a drawing, that means that if something looks symmetrical, meaning it's the same on the left as it is on the right, and it's not dimensioned otherwise, that means it's symmetrical. So the numbers that you see over here will carry over to over there. Okay, so what we're gonna do first, we'll take our pencil and we're gonna draw a line across to 1.5 and make a mark. And so that's where this carpenter square comes in really handy. You can just butt it up right against the side, find 1.5. You can easily make that mark. Okay, so again, try to make sure the camera can see that. Okay, you got your mark, 1.5, easy. Okay, that line is supposed to go down, if you look at your drawing closely, that line is supposed to go down 2 inches. Okay, so we will put that there, and then we can actually, because I know it's going to go this way, I'll mark it that way first, and then extend my line across. Voila. Okay, that line looks like it's supposed to go over sideways 1/2 inch. So there we go, from 1.5 back to 1. Okay. So there's the first part. Looks good. Okay, we can do the same thing to the other side. We were 1.5 inches. That went down to 2. And then it went over from 1.5 to 1, so 1/2 inch over. Looks good. Okay, now we look back at our drawing. Okay, to draw this line next isn't really possible because I don't tell you what angle it is, I don't tell you the distance, and we don't need to know, honestly, because we could then move to the bottom here, make these marks, and then it's just a game of connecting the dots. So we won't worry about that. Let's move down to the bottom here. Looks like the dimension here is 2.5 from the bottom. So 2.5. Right, and we'll just put a little mark right there on the side. There we go. So that's where we'll be connecting the dots. Okay, looks like 2.5 over this way as well. Keeping things simple, straightforward. Hopefully you guys can see that. Okay, 2.5. Again, everything is mirrored. This thing is symmetrical, so even though the dimensions aren't over there, we still know what it is. 2.5. And then we'll do the 2.5 here just to finish that one off. Okay, so now all we have left is the center. Okay, you know, and then another thing, you know, this center point isn't dimensioned 2.5 up from the bottom, but because the dimension isn't there and there are other features at that same point, you can make that assumption. Again, if it would be different, it would have dimensioned it. So that's kind of a, when you're reading prints, they don't want to over clutter prints. And if you just completely put every single possible dimension on it, it gets really hard to find what you're looking for. So they try to simplify that a bit. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to the 2.5 because I know it's 2.5 from the top. Okay, and this tells me if it's 4.5 over, which is actually the center. Half of 9 is 4.5. So if I go 4.5, this is actually my point right there. So you could do that. You could just make a point, and then, or you can measure up 4.5. You could find that center point a multitude of ways, but we're going to do that. Okay. Now this isn't a 90-degree angle coming from this side. That doesn't line up. So this is literally another connect the dots. So we'll start here. We'll tip that down till that lines up with that line. Connect the dots. I'm still able to use the carpenter square as a straight edge, but I'm no longer worried about it, you know, following an edge. I'm like I said, I'm just using it as a ruler to connect the dots. There we go. So that's the bottom triangle. Now this one, again, I should be able to use it just as a straight edge. Again, not caring anymore about the following an edge and keeping things square. I'm just literally using it as a ruler. You could easily just grab another ruler at this point, but since I'm holding on to it, there we go. Okay, so let's see if I can get you a good viewpoint here. So that is one. Okay, it's kind of a fisheye lens, so it looks a little distorted, but you get the idea. Okay, so that's one down. You still got one more to make. It's not a bad idea to double check your dimensions. Make sure this is 2.5. You know, if you look, you know, at the top of your sketch, the distance from here to here was supposed to be 6, so that means 1.5 here, 1.5 here. Good to double check, because the next step is to follow and trust these lines and then go over to the bandsaws over there and make all of these cuts. So really good to make sure all your lines are accurate, because if you made a mistake and then you go cut them, now it's permanent. So do the same thing, rinse and repeat. I highly recommend doing exactly what we did before and then bringing both of these over. I've seen a lot of students cut one, or draw one, cut one, and then use it as a stencil. And if you make a mistake, you've made the mistake twice now. And making a copy of a copy, it's kind of like how those nasty handouts kind of turn out, a copy of a copy of a copy. Things get less and less accurate. So highly recommend taking the time, doing the measurements. It's going to make you better at it. That's kind of why we do this stuff. So draw the other one out. And then the next video, we are going to show you how to use the bandsaw.